Today, I'm diving into a wild challenge, figuring out how China is using America's own weapon against them. Can I break it down and make sense of it all? In 1956, Britain stood as one of the world's greatest empires, controlling territories across every continent and holding influence that had shaped global affairs for centuries. But in just 72 hours, everything changed. A financial weapon was deployed against them, so devastating that it brought the mighty British Empire to its knees without a single shot being fired. The weapon was simple: selling government bonds. And the nation that pulled the trigger was the United States, forcing Britain to abandon its last colonial military operation in the Suez Crisis. Today, history is repeating itself, but this time, China holds the trigger, and America sits in Britain's old seat. The Suez Canal was Britain's lifeline, the critical waterway connecting European markets to Asian trade routes and oil from the Middle East. When Egypt's President Nasser nationalized the canal in July 1956, Britain saw it as an existential threat to its economic survival and global standing. Prime Minister Anthony Eden, desperate to maintain Britain's fading imperial prestige, secretly coordinated with France and Israel to launch a military invasion to seize back control. British forces moved into Egypt in October, confident that their military superiority would quickly restore the old order. But Eden had made a catastrophic miscalculation. He had failed to secure America's approval, and President Eisenhower was furious at being kept in the dark about the operation. Eisenhower faced a dilemma that would define the post-war world order. If he supported Britain's colonial adventure, America would be seen as endorsing the old imperial powers at the exact moment when newly independent nations across Africa and Asia were watching to see whose side the superpower would take. The Soviet Union was already gaining influence in the developing world by positioning itself as the champion of anti-colonialism. Eisenhower understood that America's future dominance depended on winning the hearts and minds of these emerging nations, not propping up the crumbling European empires. He decided that Britain had to be stopped, and he would use America's most powerful weapon: economic warfare. Britain's economy in 1956 was already fragile, still recovering from the devastating costs of World War II. The empire was running on borrowed money and borrowed time, with its currency, the pound sterling, maintained at an artificially high value through a fixed exchange rate system. This system only worked because Britain held massive gold and foreign currency reserves to defend the pound's value whenever international traders tried to sell it. But here was Britain's fatal weakness. They had borrowed heavily from the International Monetary Fund and were dependent on American financial support to maintain their reserves. Eisenhower saw the opening, and he ordered his Treasury Secretary to prepare the financial equivalent of a nuclear strike. The attack began quietly, almost invisible to the general public. The United States Treasury started selling its holdings of British government bonds, flooding the market with pounds and deliberately driving down the currency's value. At the same time, Eisenhower ordered American officials to block Britain's emergency request for IMF loans and to refuse any financial assistance until British troops withdrew from Egypt. International currency traders, seeing America turn against Britain, joined the selling frenzy, and the pound went into free fall. Within days, Britain was hemorrhaging its gold and foreign currency reserves at a catastrophic rate, losing hundreds of millions of dollars as they desperately tried to buy back pounds to stabilize the currency. The financial pressure was unbearable, and Britain's economy teetered on the edge of complete collapse. Prime Minister Eden watched in horror as Britain's treasury reported that reserves would be completely exhausted within weeks if the crisis continued. British citizens would wake up to find their currency worthless, unable to buy imported food, fuel, or medicine. The empire that had survived Hitler's bombs and ruled a quarter of the world's population was about to be destroyed by balance sheets and bond markets. On November 6th, just days after the invasion began, Eden had no choice but to order a humiliating ceasefire and withdraw British forces from Egypt. The United States had won without firing a shot, and the message was clear to every nation on Earth. America was now the sole superpower, and even its closest allies would be crushed if they defied Washington's will. Britain would never again launch a major military operation without American permission, and the empire began its final collapse into irrelevance. Fast forward to today, and the ghost of Suez haunts the halls of power in Washington. China has been steadily accumulating U.S. Treasury bonds for decades, holding over $1 trillion at its peak, becoming one of America's largest foreign creditors. But since 2013, China has been quietly reducing its holdings, selling off $53 billion in recent years, and the sales have accelerated dramatically during periods of tension between Washington and Beijing. Every time the United States threatens tariffs, sanctions, or military support for Taiwan, China's treasury holdings tick downward. The pattern is unmistakable. China is preparing the same financial weapon that America used to destroy Britain, and they're testing it in small doses to see if Washington will blink. The mechanics of China's potential attack are terrifyingly simple. If China suddenly dumped hundreds of billions of dollars in treasury bonds onto the market, it would flood the system with supply, driving down bond prices and forcing interest rates to spike upward across the American economy. Higher interest rates mean higher costs for mortgages, car loans, business borrowing, and most critically for the U.S. government's own debt payments. America already pays over $1 trillion per year just in interest on the national debt, and a sudden rate spike could add hundreds of billions more to that burden virtually overnight. The federal government would face an impossible choice: slash spending on military, social programs, and infrastructure, or print massive amounts of new money, triggering inflation that would devastate American households. Stock markets would crash as borrowing costs soared, retirement accounts would evaporate, and the dollar's value would plummet against other currencies. But China's strategy is more sophisticated than a simple financial kamikaze attack. They've been building alternative systems for years to insulate themselves from American retaliation, expanding trade agreements that bypass the dollar, accumulating gold reserves, developing their own international payment systems to rival SWIFT, and creating economic alliances through the Belt and Road Initiative. When China sells treasuries, they're not just attacking America's finances, they're demonstrating to the entire world that the dollar's dominance is a choice, not an inevitability. Every nation watching sees that China can inflict pain on America's economy, and they begin to question whether tying their own fortunes to the dollar is wise when the system's stability depends on Washington and Beijing not going to war. The real damage isn't just the immediate financial crisis, it's the long-term erosion of confidence in American economic hegemony that has been the foundation of global power since 1945. The question that keeps strategists awake at night is whether America has the tools that Britain lacked in 1956. The U.S. Federal Reserve could theoretically buy up any treasuries that China dumps, preventing interest rates from spiking. But this would require printing enormous amounts of new money and would signal to the world that America's debt is no longer sustainable without artificial life support. America could retaliate by freezing Chinese assets held in U.S. banks, estimated to be over $1 trillion. But this would destroy the dollar's reputation as a safe haven and cause every other nation to pull their money out of American markets in fear that they might be next. The brutal truth is that financial weapons are different than military ones. Once you prove you're willing to use them, trust evaporates, and trust is the only thing holding the entire global financial system together. China knows this, and they're carefully calibrating their treasury sales to stay just below the threshold that would force America into a desperate response. History teaches us that empires don't usually fall to invading armies anymore. They collapse when the rest of the world stops believing in the value of their currency and the credibility of their promises. Britain learned this in 1956, when America taught them that military might means nothing if your economy can be switched off remotely. Today, America stands where Britain stood, and China watches with the same cold calculation that Eisenhower showed 70 years ago. The treasury dump has already begun, slow and steady, pressure that accumulates like cracks in a dam. Every $1 billion sold is a test, a probe to see how much pain America can absorb before it changes its policies or lashes out in desperation. And somewhere in Beijing, analysts are studying the data, refining their models, and waiting for the perfect moment to show the world that the American empire, like the British before it, can be brought down not by missiles, but by mathematics. The financial battles of the 21st century are fought in shadows, in bond markets and currency exchanges, where most people never see the weapons being deployed. But make no mistake, we are living through the same revolution that destroyed the British Empire, just moving in slow motion. The question isn't whether China will use its financial weapon fully, it's whether America will recognize the danger before it's too late, or whether history will record that the American empire fell exactly the way the British did, betrayed by its own debts, humiliated by a rising power, and powerless to stop the mathematics of its own decline. The countdown has already started, and every day that passes without a resolution brings us closer to the moment when China decides the time has come to pull the trigger. Follow for more videos that dive into the forgotten histories that shaped our modern world, the secret financial wars that destroyed empires, and the hidden patterns that reveal where global power is heading next. These are the stories they don't teach in school, the moments when everything changed and nobody realized until it was too late. If this story opened your eyes to how empires really fall, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss the next chapter. Drop a comment below telling me what hidden history you want uncovered next. The truth is out there, buried in the archives, waiting for someone brave enough to dig it up. And remember, the greatest weapon isn't the one that destroys buildings, it's the one that destroys